Hi, I'm still not Corey, and I also still have ADHD. Real bad. So today we're gonna go to TikTok and see if we have ADHD, because that's the best place to find out, apparently. Before we get started, get down to the comments and let me know if you have ADHD or any other neurodivergencies. I'm interested. Leave a comment letting me know. Also, go ahead and check out my Patreon. It's what lets me make these videos for you. You can get a whole bunch of cool stuff, like bonus videos and early videos. In fact, if you head there now, you can watch next week's video today. How cool is that? And last thing is my merch. We've got stupid baby t-shirts and a whole bunch of gay stuff if that's your style. So go ahead and check all of that out and we can start the video now. So here are 5 signs you have undiagnosed ADHD. You keep losing interest in your hobbies. Yeah, this is true. True. You struggle to manage your money. You leave things to the last minute. You constantly are looking for things. And you feel like you're underachieving. See, like, okay, right. So I don't want to make fun of this creator specifically. They're not the only one that does this kind of thing, but I have a real big issue with this style of content because, yes, do you know what? These are things that you will see in people that have ADHD, but saying these are 5 signs that you have undiagnosed ADHD, that's not really the case. Like, let's go through these again and actually think about why that might not be the case, right? Because, like, the first one, you keep losing interest in your hobbies. That is a symptom of depression, right? Like, losing interest in the things that you find interesting otherwise is what happens when you're depressed. Struggling to manage money is also something that can come about because of depression or mania even. There's so many reasons that you might struggle with managing money, and saying this is a sign of undiagnosed ADHD isn't super helpful. Leaving things to the last minute is probably the only one so far that I look at and I'm like, yeah, it's probably an ADHD thing combined with all of these other factors, right? And that's a key point as well. Any of these things individually, they're not really a strong case for having ADHD. And even struggling with more than one of these things simultaneously doesn't necessarily mean that you have ADHD. And that last one, you're constantly looking for things, I take issue with the way that it's phrased because people look for stuff all the time. I know what he means and I know I'm being a little bit pedantic, but when it comes to something like ADHD and making content about ADHD, you kind of have a responsibility to be careful, right? Because you don't want to make people that don't have ADHD think that they do have it. And you also don't want to misrepresent what ADHD is or how difficult it is living with it. When you say things like you're constantly looking for things, I think a lot of people without ADHD probably feel like they're constantly looking for things. Like, oh, where are my keys? Oh, where's the remote? With ADHD, it's not just constantly looking for things, it's not being able to find things that you just put down that are sitting right in front of you. It is so incredibly frustrating. The number of times I have had no idea where my phone is and it turns out, oh, it was sat next to me. Or I've not been able to find my keys and they were in my jacket pocket that I last used. Or I've lost the remote and it's somewhere in the living room. Once it showed up in the fridge. Like, look, ADHD is very complex and I understand wanting to make content about it. But when you make this kind of content with the goal of being kind of relatable and telling people, hey, you might have ADHD, you definitely have a responsibility to make sure you're not going to make a ton of people that don't have ADHD think that they might have ADHD. Here are 6 signs you may have ADHD. Adult edition. Already this one is better because it says may have ADHD. It's just one word, but I think it's really important. The last one said here were 5 signs of undiagnosed ADHD and didn't really say that these could be a lot of other things too. This one at least is saying you might have ADHD if you do these things, but you also might not, which is very important. Impulsive spending, obviously, yes. Losing interest in hobbies, the same ones again. Always late, misplacing things, scrolling through TikTok but ignoring texts, walking into a room and forgetting why you're there. While this one is good because it says may, it kind of falls down in the fact that it doesn't really describe how much you need to do these things for it to be considered related to ADHD, right? Because the thing is, with ADHD, quite a few of the signs and symptoms are relatable experiences for a lot of people. For some of these things, the difference between the average neurotypical person and someone with ADHD is how much you do that thing. Sure, a lot of people can misplace things or forget why they've walked into a room or spend impulsively, but doing those things aren't really signs of ADHD. But my main issue is scrolling through TikTok whilst ignoring text because come on, so many people do that. And saying ignoring is the word that I really have a problem with there, because if you have ADHD, you might not actually be ignoring text. You just kind of have forgotten that they're there. I do that all the time. I'll look at a text, I'll think, yep, I need to respond to that. Immediately the text is gone from my brain. Like, I just do not know that it's there anymore. Like, I literally forget that my friends exist until I look on the wall of friends that I have in my living room and remember, oh yeah, Ian exists. Good to know. Seriously, you can just forget that a text exists, so you're not necessarily ignoring it. You just don't have a concept of it being there at all. And you're engrossed in TikTok, so you're stuck in it. It's not an active choice to ignore a text. It's being stuck doing a thing. I got stuck watching TikTok earlier today. I started work at 9 a.m. and it's now almost midnight and I'm still working because so much of my time was put into doing nothing because I couldn't stop myself from doing it. And I get it, these TikToks are supposed to be short and snappy and relatable, but when you are making content like this, you have a responsibility to be accurate. And if you're not accurate, it can actually have repercussions. If you have a ton of people who don't have ADHD thinking that they have ADHD and looking for an ADHD diagnosis, you're gonna overrun the system. Like, the waiting lists in the UK right now are super, super long. I'm not trying to make a trender argument but apply it to ADHD. What I'm saying is that misinformation can have actual consequences. And while this isn't strictly untrue, it's bordering on misinformation because of how people will understand it. And again, if you're going to try and educate people in some way, you should try and make sure that what they're going to understand is actually accurate. And sure, people mess up. I personally have messed up a ton of times, but I'm talking about the input, about the mindset that you've got when you approach topics like this. If your mindset is, I'm gonna try and be relatable, I'm gonna try and spread this to people, that's not the best mindset when it comes to teaching people about ADHD or letting people know that they might have ADHD. Signs of ADHD/ADD. Right off the bat, ADD doesn't exist. It doesn't exist anymore. In the same way that Asperger's doesn't exist. They were diagnoses, but they aren't anymore. Daydreaming, fidgeting, mood swings, depression, what? I forgot, no emotion, hyper interrupting. This one is not good. It says signs of ADHD, then goes on to say a lot of really broad things that apply to most people, like daydreaming. Are you really going to tell me that daydreaming is a sign of ADHD? Not excessive daydreaming, just daydreaming in and of itself. Depression in and of itself? Yes, people with ADHD are more likely to be depressed, but putting that in a video and saying these are signs of ADHD, I'm not saying that the things in that video can't point to ADHD. I'm just saying that they can very easily be nothing or something else. Fidgeting, it's something that people do. Fidgeting constantly, feeling like you need to fidget to let out energy, that's different. But just saying fidgeting doesn't quite convey that difference. Saying daydreaming, sure, you can get fixated on a daydream and like detach yourself from what's going on around you because you're not really paying attention to it. That could be something that happens because of ADHD. But just daydreaming is a perfectly normal thing. And this is the issue. You cannot just say, here are a bunch of things that anyone and everyone does. These are signs of ADHD. You need to be clearer, because I promise you, people are going to see that and be like, oh, daydreaming is ADHD? I didn't really, no. And this isn't coming from me just having a really big issue with people that don't have ADHD thinking that they do have ADHD. I don't like there being misinformation about ADHD out there. I don't like it when people don't understand what ADHD is, because when you say daydreaming and fidgeting, it doesn't really convey what it actually is, what it actually feels like. You're casting a wide net and making it quite relatable, but in doing so, you're missing some of the key elements of those things that tie them to ADHD. And here are some things that you're doing due to ADHD, apparently. Impulse buying, you're doing that because of ADHD. You're struggling to make choices because of ADHD. You're hearing noises that most wouldn't because of ADHD. And you're struggling to stick to a routine because of ADHD. You're also having a hard time with rejection because of ADHD, and you're constantly losing jobs because of ADHD. Now, look, I understand the things that he's getting at here, but also saying that you're doing these things due to ADHD is maybe not the best thing to do when you're also making content that's saying, hey, you may have ADHD. You need to be very specific in who you're talking to. Sure, if you're talking to an audience that has ADHD, that's fine. But if you're talking to a wider audience, including people that might have ADHD, or people that are just stumbling upon it, saying you're doing these things due to ADHD and not specifying that's only really the case if you actually have ADHD, it's a bit of a problem. Because again, there are other reasons that people can struggle with these things. Seriously, a lot of these can be down to depression or anxiety or even autism. So saying you're doing these things due to ADHD, look, it's not that big a deal, but it's also not that hard to be just a little bit more accurate, right? I don't know, describing rejection-sensitive dysphoria as having a hard time with rejection, I feel like you're softening it a lot, because rejection-sensitive dysphoria isn't just having a hard time with it. It's a lot more severe and serious with that. And by diluting it down to just having a hard time, lots of people have a hard time with rejection. It's actually quite normal to have a hard hard time with rejection. My issues with these videos are subtle, but I do think that those subtle differences are quite important ones. I think when it comes to making content about ADHD, it's more important to have that little bit more information and being accurate and having clarity than it is to be relatable. And I think some of these videos are more focused on being relatable than they are on giving clear and accurate information. And it is important because it affects people's understanding of ADHD. If you care about people with ADHD, you should probably care about people actually understanding what ADHD is. I can't tell you how frustrating it is for people to think it's as simple as just forgetting what you're doing when you walk into a room, which, oh, they do sometimes. No, it's much harder than that. It's so much more far-reaching, and making content that kind of dilutes down what ADHD is and doesn't really accurately convey what the signs and symptoms are, what these things actually mean, I don't think that's a good thing. I'm not saying these people are terrible or evil or are doing an irredeemably horrible thing. I just think they could be a little bit better. This is a little bit of constructive criticism. Just put in the littlest bit of extra effort to make sure people understand what these things are and why it's different for someone who doesn't have ADHD compared to someone that does have ADHD. Well, that's enough for this video in my opinion. Let me know what you thought down in the comments, and also tell me if you've got ADHD or any other spicy brain stuff going on. Also, go ahead and check out my Patreon. Look, my patrons, they're going down there. You can join them now. I think they're going up, actually. I don't know which way they're going. They're there. You can join them. You could also join the group of people that get their names read out at the end of my videos. So I'm going to do that now. So a big thank you to Christopher A. Butler, Prince of Horror, Adam Black, Maul, Ataraxia25. I read out Christopher A. Butler too early. Ataraxia25, Utterly Casey, Donito, and Brad the Music Duck. Thank you very much for watching. That's it from me. Goodbye.